So for my lesson today, I wanted to talk about the fourth principle in the Leave No Trace principles. It is the one that talks about leaving what you find in nature. Um, One of the first kind of things I read on their website that I thought was really interesting and really cool to hear, it said, allow others a sense of discovery by leaving rocks, plants, archaeological artifacts, and other objects of interest as you find them. And I thought that was really cool because it's a super simple way to essentially say, leave, reasoning, I guess, behind why you shouldn't take certain things in nature, because not only is it harmful to the land, you're taking away an experience for someone else. And if you can picture yourself having that sense of discovery, and with you taking something out of that natural area, then you are not allowing for someone else that comes along to have that same experience that was so special for you. So I think there's many other ways that we can appreciate the land and not have to, take from it. One of the first points I wanted to talk about was minimizing your alterations to your campsite. So a lot of times when people go to campsites, they want to kind of modify it to them, whether that be digging out areas for a cooking area, or digging out your a trench for where your tent's gonna go, and stuff like that is kind of detrimental to the land and impacts it enough that the next person that comes along will have a different experience than you did, and maybe having it impacted so heavily by you, it might be a worse experience and a less natural experience. So trying not to alter the landscape in that way is really beneficial. And then a lot of the times people like to try to clean an area up when they're camping somewhere. So for instance, when you're putting your tent down and your tarp down and stuff, people like to try to move all the rocks and the sticks or whatever's under there, move it out of the way to have a nice flat area with no objects that you'd be sleeping on, which is perfectly fine. But then when you leave this big open space of where there's nothing, surrounded by all the rocks and twigs and stuff, so it kind of looks weird and it looks like someone had been there. So one of the good ways to try to not have that impact be so great is by trying to cover that up by putting the sticks back down, putting the rocks back in that area when you're done and when you're leaving, so it looks like no one was there, and you are lessening your impact on that area. Another point is to avoid damaging natural and living pieces of the land, like plants and trees, flowers, stuff like that. A lot of the times people like to carve into trees and stuff, which is horrible and ruins the tree and can potentially kill it and harm it in a way that it won't allow it to further in its life. But a lot of the times it's also ruining the experience for another person again, It's like graffiti. It's like coming to a building or a school and having graffiti all over the walls. It's that same concept. You come to your campsite and you have graffiti on all the trees, and it, kind of takes you out of that natural setting and ruins your experience. And people they feel the need to have to hammer things into trees, or tying around things in trees, which it's fine to try to tie things around trees, but hammering into them and stuff is harming it in a way that you can't reverse at all. But with ropes and wiring and stuff, trying to tie around, that is perfectly fine as long as you can mitigate your impact on whatever living thing you're tying it to, by either putting protection or not having it as tight, because you can constrict branches and trees and harm a tree as much as you would when you're carving into it. So little things like that to keep in mind of. And then one of the bigger ones that we do frequently is picking those living pieces that are in the landscape, like flowers, or breaking off leaves and stuff like that. You're essentially killing these plants, and there's nothing you can do after doing that to help that. You are taking from the land and you can't give back to it in that sense. And a lot of people look at it as, oh, well, it's just one plant, like it's not that big of an issue. But in reality, when you think about it like that, yeah, maybe it's not a big issue right then, but if you do that, and then the next person comes and does that, and then the next 5,000 people do that, then you have thousands and thousands of plants that will never regrow, that have been taken out of their natural area, and you're creating a bigger impact than just that one plant. It may not seem like a lot in the moment, but if everyone thought the same way that you did, that, oh, my one impact isn't large enough, then we would have nothing. And so I think kind of trying to think about it in that way, and same thing with trees and branches, rocks, cool things you find in nature. You're taking away from that land, and there's always a consequence. Even if it doesn't seem like such a big thing, there's always going to be a consequence that you're impacting the land. And then one activity I kind of wanted to do would be finding a way to appreciate the land in a way without like taking from it. So trying to find something you feel is beautiful in your area, whether that be a tree or a plant, or even just a little flower, a rock, whatever that piece of nature is that you find beautiful. And instead of trying to take that and bring it home with you, to sit down and use your own creativity to try to keep that memory alive with you, whether it's tracing a rock and or a leaf and how that looks and stuff, or even just trying to draw the area you're in or write about it, any form of creativity to keep that memory with you without taking from the land. And I think practicing that is super beneficial. You can have this great memory with you forever, but you're not taking from the land that you are loving so much. And then kind of going back, it all ties into that activity is leaving those natural objects as well as cultural artifacts. So a lot of times people want to take sheds and like the antlers from different animals that are out in nature and stuff, but you're taking away from that land, and it will have an impact whether you realize it or not. And it also ruins that experience for another person, like we talked about previously. You don't allow someone else the experience to discover something and to have that joy or whatnot. So thinking about that is pretty crucial. And then it's also illegal in some places. So in national parks, it's actually illegal to take pieces of the natural area, and some of the times there's rules like you can only take a certain amount, and you may not exceed taking this many items per year and stuff. Yeah, and kind of one thing I wanted to just touch base on and how I feel about LNT and principles, especially like this one, is they're not laws, they are guidelines. So it's not like someone's going to arrest you if you took 20 rocks, but it's not necessarily to have control over the person that's traveling in these areas and visiting these places. It is to protect the natural land and protect our experiences. Having these guidelines makes it so that we are put in line, so we know what is wrong, because if we didn't, we would keep doing that, and the way we would realize what our impact is when it's all gone. So I think recognizing that it is a choice, but if you're making that wrong choice and choosing to disregard a lot of these guidelines, you're ruining the experience for yourself as well as many others. So just kind of thinking about that when you are going outside and when you are thinking about taking something, and no one's going to arrest you if you take one rock, but just kind of think about your impacts, and it's on us to keep these lands as pristine and natural as we possibly can.